Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Welcome, welcome to all those who are here in the room and to the many more who are connected through Zoom. Thank you all. I am both equally pleased to see so many people here and online for this, as I am pleased that we are doing this. Obviously, since October 7th, I imagine many, including myself, have been following as best as possible the events taking place in Israel and in Gaza. And one of the things that I recognize is we have a unique challenge here in the United States, that we rely on others to tell us the stories of what's happening. And that becomes problematic because very often we are relying on somebody we may not know what they bring to the table or what assumptions they have already decided upon. And the truth is, as somebody who not only has watched with the media, but has found this when it comes to interpreting text, everyone brings a bias of some sort. So I thought that maybe one of the things that I wanted to do was to be able to hear from somebody, not who's reporting through sort of a bystander or a removed eye, but somebody, number one, who is living what's happening. Number two, somebody who I am so honored and proud to say I know and I trust, not just because he's a rabbi. That sometimes helps, but I'm sure as Rabbi Steve and I would both say, not all rabbis maybe, but having had the opportunity to spend time with Rabbi Steve in last February, there was a group from Temple Bethel that traveled to Israel, and we had an amazing trip. We went from north to south, east to west, saw so many wonderful sights. And one of the highlights was Friday night that we got to spend at a Kibbutz Gezer, where Rabbi Steve and his community welcomed us in to the nth degree. It was amazing. Not only was it a wonderful Shabbat service that he led, but an entire spread of food that they put out for us. They really made us feel welcome and comfortable. What made that night really nice was we got a chance to meet so many people from the kibbutz and Rabbi Steve, his wife, his daughter, who is absolutely lovely, and we got to meet her as well. And probably as Rabbi Steve talks, some of this will come to light. So that's sort of the groundwork of why we're here, because I really trust Rabbi Steve to be able to not only give us an honest perspective, a real perspective, certainly an Israeli perspective, but from the perspective of someone who is very kind and compassionate and a really smart guy. So with all that said, allow me please to welcome Rabbi Steve Burnstein from Kibbutz Gezer. Right?
Thank you.
So my friend, is there anything you want to say? I know Rabbi Steve and I had kind of been in touch, and there are a few questions I have, but I wanted to throw it to you in case there was anything you wanted to mention, refute, disagree with me, whatever.
Well, about being a smart guy, I'm not sure about that, but I guess I would just chime in when you were talking about how we look at texts and the biases that come with the news. Something that I wrote recently was it doesn't matter what I'm listening to, what I'm reading, who I'm talking to. I'm angry and I argue with everybody. Anybody, especially anybody who says that they've got the answer, as far as I'm concerned, they're wrong. And my answer from 1 minute to the next, I'm going to think is wrong. Because it's just so painful, it's just so complicated, And God, I wish there were answers. I wish there were easy answers. But the answer to everything having to do with Israel in the 25 or more years that I've been living here has always been it's complicated, but it's never been this complicated. So I guess I'll put that out there as my introduction.
Perfect introduction. And it's maybe worth mentioning, I had not mentioned that, as you can tell from his accent, Rabbi Steve is not a native Israeli. He's a native of Kansas City. But made Aliyah and now is living in really a beautiful, beautiful place. So everyone's aware, our structure for today, I prepared some questions for Rabbi Steve just to kind of get us started in our conversation, and then we'll certainly open it up for your questions, and I'll talk more about how we'll finesse that with people in the room and on Zoom as well. But so Rabbi Steve, so the first question that kind of came to me, so around October 7th, there seemed to initially be a sense of shock. We all kind of felt shock, and then it gave way to pain of loss and, of course, anger. Where would you say, sort of in the emotions realm, Israel is now?
On a very scary roller coaster. The pain and the anger is still there, compounded with now more than 2 months of physical and mental exhaustion. We've turned into activists. The synagogue here, some of you have been here, where we had services, and then when we turned it into a dining room. So in the last 2 months, we have turned it into a dining room for soldiers who were in the area as part of the call-up of more than 300,000 reserves. So sometimes they would meet near here. We would invite them to come here for dinner, and people from the community would come out and put together a spread for them. We've become a kitchen where we prepared meals to send with the soldiers, and where we also, there are a couple of hospitals that are 2 different major hospitals that are within a 20-minute drive from here. In particular, the surgical staff and the emergency room staff, while the hospitals have lovely dining rooms where they could have sit-down meals, they don't want to stop working. So we made sandwiches and things that they can eat while they're still working, while they're on the run. So 1 day a week, we have people in here, and we make somewhere between 200 and 500 sandwiches to send to the hospital. We've been a house of mourning. We have 18 soldiers from not from the kibbutz, but from our neighborhood. We're a regional kibbutz of what's called the Gezer region. A regional synagogue of the Gezer region, and it's on Kibbutz Gezer, but not only for Kibbutz Gezer. So from our region, there have been 18 soldiers who've died. And obviously 97 soldiers altogether, and some 1,400 other people, including Vivian Silver, who was a founder of Kibbutz Gezer in the 70s. Before she moved to Be'eri, she was a peace activist. Because Kibbutz Be'eri is still a battle zone and a crime scene and the site of horrors that are just unimaginable. They couldn't do the funeral with extended people there. So we had the funeral here with over 2,000 people. So that, along with so we're a house of mourning. but we also do our best to be a house of hope and prayer, and a house of celebration. We're praying for the recovery of, depending on which reports you listen to up to 6,000 injured soldiers. I'll come back to that later and talk about two in particular that are very close friends of my daughter, Gabriella. We're praying for the hostages and continue to pray for those who have been released. And we pray for the families. We pray for the soldiers. We've also become a logistics center, collecting all kinds of supplies that we send to soldiers, everything from specialized noise canceling earphones for the medical units that are stationed next to heavy artillery. We have a guy from the kibbutz who's a neurosurgeon who is the head of a MASH unit, and they couldn't get the ear protection that they needed being next to heavy artillery. So with money that we had raised, we got that for them. We have about 40 kids from the kibbutz and adults who are soldiers right now. And we constantly let them know if there's anything that they need, let us know. So we've gotten the ear protection. We've gotten winter clothes with 300,000 reservists called up. Nobody ever dreamed that we would have this kind of call up. So the army wasn't ready and still doesn't have all the supplies that all the soldiers need. So all over the country, people are helping however they can to get critical supplies to our soldiers. I'll come back to my and feel free to interrupt. I know I'm rambling.
No. I mean,
my daughter Gabriella, who's 21 years old, she's a physical trainer for combat soldiers. That's what she's been doing. She has been a dancer since she was very young, and a very serious dancer with the dance company. And because of how good a shape she's in, they love picking petite young women like her to be the ones who train these big husky combat soldiers who walk in and see her and think, what is this little girl going to teach me? But her strength and her endurance, she can hold her own with them. And but as she says, everything that they did before October 7th, it's totally changed now. Nobody imagined that we would be in the position that we're in right now. And she said while she always took her position seriously, she knows that it's making a difference, and that the soldiers that she trained, who are in Gaza now or in the north, who are serious combat soldiers, she feels more comfortable knowing that she played a role in helping them to be better prepared for what they're dealing with. She has two very close friends. One who was shot by a sniper in his hand, and another one, and this was several weeks ago, and he actually is about to move here to Kibbutz Gezer. We're at a discounted rate. We're giving him a place because it's close to the hospital where he needs to do physical therapy, and because Gabriella knows him and we know him, he has people to support him here. He's estranged from his family. So we told him he's got a family here and a place to stay. And we're taking care of, making sure that he doesn't have to worry about paying for the apartment, and that he's taken care of while he's here. And then she's got another friend, Omer, who just a few days ago, 10:30 at night, Gabriella called us hysterical in tears, that he had been hit by an RPG. He lost his left hand. He just yesterday, they brought him out of an induced coma, and I can't tell you how painful it is having people we know go through this, and even more difficult watching our children go through this. It's complicated. It's complicated. I'll take a step back while I'm talking about Gabi to October 7th. On October 7th, Gabi, she has a boyfriend of 2 years who is training to be he's in pilot training for the Air Force, and they rarely get vacation when they're in their training programs. He had a week vacation. Gabi had vacation time saved up. She was able to juggle it, and the two of them, together with some other friends, went to the country of Georgia, Georgia. They were there and had gotten on a flight that was on its way back to Israel on October 7th. The flight was turned around, and for some reason they sent it to Istanbul. Now, relations with Turkey recently have been somewhat complicated. Luckily, her boyfriend is a pilot, and the Army and the Air Force did everything that they needed to do to make sure that they didn't stay in Turkey, even in a secure airport. And they got back to Israel in the midst of missiles flying and craziness going on. I went to pick her up. She immediately got a call when she landed that they, not a surprise, but she was had to go right to her base. So took her boyfriend home, and then was bringing her home to pick up what she needed so that we could go to her base. And there was a red alert, a siren. It's bad enough when it happens, anytime. I've got my office here in the building is a safe room, is a bomb shelter. In our home, we have a bomb shelter. We have several neighbors who don't have, and they come to our house if a siren goes off. But when you're driving and a siren goes off, you have to get out of the car, and move away from the road, away from the car, and then lay down on the ground, doing your best to protect your head. Gabriella is telling me, but this is what you do. Here's how you do it. She was making sure that I knew what to do. I don't know how to describe what we're going through here.
Well, just the thought, as you say, 21-year-old who's training 18 and 19-year-olds. Here in our country, they're thinking about going to college. Right. And they're training for war.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a lot of heavy stuff. Just to kind of take a little bit of a breath. So, we watched as a good number of the hostages came back. What was that like? And if you can kind of delve into why that's such an important moment for Israelis.
I don't know if this lightens it up at all. But the entire country was crying tears of joy. We were ecstatic for a week. But with this roller coaster of ups and downs, letting them go, not letting them go, what condition were they in? But watching those hugs, the seeing families reunited, it was indescribable joy, simcha gdola. Yet at the same time, there was agony and horror as over the weeks we've learned more and more about, we continue to learn more and more about what they went through, knowing that what we're hearing is only the tip of the iceberg. Knowing that they came back to those wonderful hugs and those beautiful moments, but that for so many of them, much of their family that they were hoping to see weren't there to greet them because they were killed on October 7th. Many of them coming back, to know that their homes are no more. And that some of their loved ones are still in captivity. So it's the roller coaster continues, but for the most part, the country is unified. That we do whatever it takes to bring those hostages home. And it's not easy when we're dealing with Hamas, with an organization that plans out not just an attack, not just a war, but pre-plans the atrocities that you've all heard about. I don't need to go into graphic detail. It's not like they said, oh, we're going crazy, let's, do horrible things. They had a playbook of the horrible things that they were going to do, and they followed it. Those aren't people that how do you negotiate with those people? How do you trust those people? How do you have a ceasefire with those people? I'm not talking about the Palestinian people. As far as I'm concerned, the vast majority, the average Palestinian is a hostage of Hamas, just like the 138 Israelis who are still in captivity. I don't know what we do. But here at Gezer, those of you who were here, I don't know if anyone remembers meeting Lee and Shali Siegel. They're from, Lee is from North Carolina. His wife Shali is from South Africa originally. He's the treasurer of our synagogue. His brother and sister-in-law, Keith and Aviva, were among those kidnapped on October 7th. We were ecstatic when Aviva came home, but Keith is still in captivity. So it's not just watching it on the news, we're living it with our friends, with our neighbors, with our family. I mean, living on a kibbutz, we're a family. So we are living it daily, going through and doing our best to support Lee and Aviva and their entire family. I want to mention what we did here last night and how it's connected with October 7th and maybe a spark of light. We've had a long-term relationship with a Catholic monastery, a community, the Beatitudes, called Emmaus. And their monastery is a 12-minute drive from here. They were with us as they have been for, 15, 20 years for Simchat Torah, where they come and they're dressed in the monk and, in their uniforms. And they dance with the Torah with us, with about, 200 or 300 people who were there for Simchat Torah. That was just such joy on Erev Simchat Torah. And some of them were planning to come back the next morning for as we continued the celebration, which of course didn't happen because at 6:30 in the morning the sirens went off. But we were, and another holiday that we have always celebrated with them is Hanukkah and Christmas. And last night, we always do the Saturday night during Hanukkah, and last night it was a more subdued celebration, but we were with them again, lighting the Hanukkah candles. And during these dark times, we desperately seek out those sparks of light to give us hope, to give us inspiration. I have to tell you, on the Friday night, I'm going to start crying here. On the Friday night when they released the first group of hostages, a dozen nuns and monks showed up for Friday night services. They said, we couldn't be alone, we had to be with you during this moment. And they joined our community to welcome Shabbat and to welcome the first group of hostages home. These are friends, these are brothers and sisters, and we've always been together to celebrate. And it's been so comforting knowing that they're here with us during these dark times, giving us support and prayers as well. I guess maybe a little bit about how life has changed being a rabbi, and what it's like, some of the things that are going on here. I, along with a lot of people from the kibbutz, I've joined our security team. And I do guard duty, an hour or two a day at the front gate of the kibbutz. I don't have a gun. I actually just applied for and received a permit for a gun license. I haven't gotten one yet because I have my entire life been someone who was not in favor of people having guns, and am rethinking that for the first time in my life. And not convinced that anyone, including me and my family, would be safer if I actually had a gun. But I wanted to start the process in the event that I feel it's necessary. So I'm at the front gate of the kibbutz, whether it's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning. And our gates are closed, and anybody who wants to come in, if they live here, then they have an app on their phone that can open the gate. And if they drive up to the gate and they don't open it, then I have to find out who they are and, who they're visiting. And it's become an unanticipated, hugely meaningful part of being a rabbi for me, which is why I sometimes do it 2 or even more hours a day, because I'll sign up often for times when people are going back and forth with kids or coming back and forth from work, because I'll have somewhere from 15 to 60 seconds with people as they're coming in to hear about how they're coping with the stress of what's going on, about their kids like mine who are in the Army and what they're doing and when they were home last or when they'll be home next, their partners or their cousins or their parents or whoever who is in the Army, who's in harm's way, who's struggling. It's been an opportunity for me to connect with people that has just been hugely important. We are having baby namings and bar and bat mitzvahs and funerals not connected with the war, and Shabbat services and many other things, but nothing's normal. At the beginning of every service, along with a reminder to turn off or to silence your telephones, I also have to mention, and in my office, God forbid there's a siren, that's where we have the safe room. No need to run. We've got a minute and a half from where we are, because sometimes we'll have people coming from places where they only have 30 seconds or 60 seconds. Here we have the luxury of a minute and a half from when a siren happens to when a missile would hit. So we have plenty of time to get into the safe room. But it's surreal that I have people here celebrating a bar mitzvah, and that's part of the instructions before we do anything else. On the morning of the funeral of Vivian Silver, when we had 2,000 people here, I was walking to the parking lot and I ran into Sorrel, Sorrel is one of the Lamed Vavniks. For those of you, Lamed Vavniks, according to our tradition, there are 36 righteous souls wandering around earth at any given time. And because of them, the world isn't totally devastated. We're dealing with some devastation, but it's not total devastation. And part of that, I'm convinced, is because of Sorrel. And Sorrel came up to me at 6:30 in the morning while we're just getting started to prepare everything for this funeral. And he's smiling. And these days, it's rare for somebody to have a huge smile on their face. And he said, Steve, Ross, his son Ross and Miriam, his wife, just had their baby. I burst into tears. I gave him a hug. He and I both knew Vivian very, very well. And to be able to celebrate, have a reason to celebrate in the midst of the darkness was so beautiful, was just so beautiful. And he was the sandik, the one who holds the baby during the circumcision, during the Brit Milah. And there is a tradition that's very strong in the Sephardic and the Mizrahi community, that the sandik, like the godfather, because of they're holding the baby during this moment when they enter into the covenant, into the brit, the connection with God, that the sandik is a conduit to heaven. and has a direct connection to the heavens and to God. So it's customary for people then in the Mizrahi community, especially, to line up after the ceremony in order to get a blessing from the sandak. Now, my Hebrew is pretty good, but I'm continued to be embarrassed by my Hebrew. I've gotten over it. I mean, it doesn't slow me down. But I've been here for, I don't know, 26 years, and I'm still limited. I'll never be able to express myself as well in Hebrew as I can in English. Sorrel's Hebrew makes me look like I could write the encyclopedia. His Hebrew is absolutely horrible. And he said to me, Steve, how am I going to bless all these people who are coming up to me expecting a blessing? I said, Sorrel, bless them in English. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but you're the right person to do it. And everyone was in tears, and he gave these beautiful, beautiful blessings, including for Sorrel and my another dear friend, Debbie, who has children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, about a dozen of them who are in the Army, many in combat units. And she came up to me and she said, Steve, can Sorrel really give me a blessing? I said, Debbie, how long have you known Sorrel? Is there anyone better to give you a blessing? And I stood with him, and the three of us just stood together and cried as he gave her a beautiful, beautiful blessing that everyone should come home safely and in good health. That's a little bit about our reality here.
Well, Steve, if it's all right, one of the things I'd love to do, even though I could go on with lots of questions, but I imagine there are people here and online who also have questions. So what I'd love to do is open it up for those here in the great room. If you have a question, you know, just sort of indicate by raising your hand, and I'll invite you to speak. And just speak up when you do. Our wonderful meeting owl contraption will pick you up. For those of you online, one of the things, if you're watching by Zoom, if you do have a question, what I'll invite you to do is to indicate that you have a question by selecting under reactions at the bottom bar, raise hand. That way I know that you have a question, or you can type it into the chat, and I'll know you can just type, I have a question, and then we'll call on you, okay? So that way we can try and get as many questions in as possible. So we'll start over here, kind of make our way across. Go ahead, please.
Sort of a question really for the kids, but maybe for some of us as well. Can you maybe just speak very briefly for kids that may not understand what a kibbutz is, or what living is like in a kibbutz community, as opposed to maybe like a traditional suburban community or city? I think that's unique for the kids to learn more about.
Kibbutz has gone through major changes and evolutions. On the one hand, now it's kind of like suburbia. On the other hand, it's a suburbia that's like living at summer camp. We've got, I don't know, around 400 people, including our children, that live here. There are no strangers. Everybody knows everybody. In the middle of the night, you know, from the other side of the kibbutz, based on the way they're walking, I know who it is. We raise our children together. We have 1,000 acres of farm. We have 300 milking cows, and practically nobody from the kibbutz works with the cows or in the farming. But we live in a very close, tight-knit community. The most amazing part of it, I will share, is raising our children together. Our kids grow up with dozens and dozens of brothers and sisters, big sisters, little brothers, big brothers. My children, our children, Micah and Gabi are adopted of Ethiopian descent, adopted here in Israel, each of them when they were infants. At school, when they were young, there were occasions of children, as children do, being mean, saying inappropriate things. And when they were saying them to our kids, sometimes racist things would come out. God help anybody who picked on my kids, because they had dozens of brothers, big brothers and sisters. It's kind of like me and my brother and I have always fought about everything, but you better not mess with him, right? We take care of our family, and that's what it's like growing up here. It's absolutely amazing. Everybody knows everybody's business. In the old days, we were eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. In the old days, all of our houses were 60 square meters, which is, I don't know, what's that, 200 square feet, not even. Very, very small houses, because they were originally built where we didn't eat at home, because we ate together in a communal dining room. We didn't even watch television or listen to the radio at home, because we had a clubhouse, a moadon, right? And that's where you go to drink coffee or tea and to watch the news. Why would you do that by yourself at home? And over the years, as things have changed, some people have added onto their houses, and people who were building new homes now are building beautiful homes that are much bigger than the house that my family lives in. So things are changing, but I think the key is it's a community. Again, we have, God forbid, when a siren goes off, we've got anywhere from 3 to 10 neighbors who come into our house, and if we're not there, they come in anyway. Because we've got a safe room.
Great.
Thank you.
David.
Yes, Rabbi, thank you very much. That really does sound idyllic, the community in which you live and the kibbutz around there. But what is incomprehensible to me is that your kibbutzim, and I believe that those right next to the Gaza border, were very open, and a lot of left-winger peacenik types of people, including your friend Vivian, and yet the Gaza terrorists targeted them, and the kibbutzim also invited Gaza workers to come into their homes. And has that changed the way that that Israelis now are looking at the possibility or the viability of a two-state solution?
Excellent question, and I'm not sure I have an answer. I can tell you that at Vivian's funeral, which is, by the way, you can watch it online, although it's all in Hebrew, but there are Muslims and Christians and Jews who are coming together and eulogizing her. And we were hugging and crying together as we mourned her loss. People who for years have been part of a wide variety of movements striving for peace, for coexistence, for building bridges. It's certainly, going to be even more complicated now. Exactly how that's going to play out, I think it's just too early to be able to see. At the same time, I can't give up that hope. I see what war is doing to my children, to our community. I see what it's doing, a small taste. I get a picture of what it's doing to hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians in Gaza. And we can't continue like this. So I have to hope and pray that we will find a way to move toward peace. But it's going to be different now. At the same time, if we look historically, Mina Meitzar Karatiya, we have these depths of horror that happen, and we try to reach new heights as we come out of the depths. And I'm hopeful that will happen, and that we will find leaders globally, Israeli, Palestinian, who are what my grandfather would say are who a mensch and a nobleman, people who are willing to make the hard decisions, moving us towards peace and security, but peace.
Thank you very much.
Linda and Eileen, online.
Hello, Rabbi Steve. Eileen and I were fortunate to have been there in February and met your beautiful family and your congregation, and very happy to see you are safe right now. My question is very similar to what the gentleman in the room said. In this country, as I'm sure you know, there's been a lot of anti-Semitic rhetoric in it under the guise of being pro-Palestinian. And I'm curious to know, our own kids we've argued with about whether or not we should be bombing civilians in Gaza to get to Hamas, and whether or not there's another answer to get all of the hostages out before the bloodshed continues. What is and maybe you can't answer this, maybe you'll say the same thing you've been saying, that it's complicated, but what is the general feeling of the average Israeli citizen? Are they in favor of a ceasefire until all the hostages are, or is it varied as it is everywhere else?
I hesitate to speak for all Israelis. And my bias, I don't even know anymore. My heart is broken, and I weep at the devastation that I know my people, our children, are causing in Gaza. At the same time, the ultimate cause of that is not us, it's Hamas, who has been terrorizing not only Israelis, but the innocent Palestinians, using the women and the children as human shields, having their leadership infrastructure as well as storage facilities for munitions. And I have to say, one of the problems having kids in the army and neighbors who are very high up is sometimes we hear information that's not generally publicized. But what Hamas is doing and the way they're using their own citizens is no less horrifying than what we know about what they did on the 7th. I wish I had, or someone had, another solution but the way they have embedded themselves in tunnels under schools and mosques and hospitals and the underground infrastructure. The problem is 17 years ago, we should have dealt with this, and it wouldn't have gotten to the devastation that it is now. And as good as our intelligence has been, I don't think it was good enough, from what I hear, to know how extensive and how deep these tunnels were. And I know that right now and every few years, right, there's a flare up with Gaza. And there's some fighting and there are horrible deaths. And then there's a ceasefire until they start it again. And it only becomes a big deal when they start shooting bombs that get close to my home. Because I'm 50 miles or 60 miles away. But for those people, or sorry, kilometers. But for those people who are living right around the border area, the missiles haven't stopped in all these years. And the country hasn't done enough about it and doesn't go in and doesn't fight back because we don't want to hurt innocent Palestinians. So we'll just live with it as long as the missiles are only bothering the people, only the tens of thousands who live in the Gaza area, as long as it's only their children and parents who are running to bomb shelters, then we don't do anything. And I think the entire country now is at a point where we have to say, this can't happen for the people down there or anywhere in the country. We've got to once and for all get rid of these monsters. And I feel horrible saying that, but I don't know of any other way.
Rabbi Steve, I noticed on chat, someone just posted a question. What incentives are given to the non-Hamas Palestinians to give intelligence reports to the IDF? Is that something that's happening?
It's absolutely something that's happening. There are financial incentives, but to be honest, my understanding is that the vast majority of the people who give intelligence are against Hamas and understand who these people are and feel held hostage by them and know that the only hope of their lives changing is Israel coming in and getting rid of them.
Wow. Yes, I have a question in the room.
What do you see as a path forward from here?
Until Sinwar, until the key leadership, I can't even believe that I'm saying this, until the key leadership of Hamas is taken out, I don't see how there can be a ceasefire. They continue to say, from those who are still embedded in Gaza, and even more so from those who are living in the lap of luxury throughout the Middle East and the Arab world, they continue to say, we can't wait for the next October 7th. This was just the first of many. So the path forward first of all, has to be taking out these people, these monsters. The next step is, listen, we have to get rid of our current coalition, as far as I'm concerned, for all kinds of reasons. Number one right now is this radical racist right-wing coalition led by Ben Gvir and Smotrich. They were planning to do a racist march through East Jerusalem just Saturday night. That was going to be called Tzadat HaMaccabim, the March of the Maccabees, that the police at the last minute stopped. But the only reason that they were doing this is because Ben Gvir has been quite open at his disappointment that in the West Bank and Arab Israelis, who are full citizens of Israel, they haven't been rioting and they haven't been trying to kill people. And he was hoping that would happen so that he could justify fighting and trying to kill Israeli citizens and take away their rights. And thank God there have been within the Palestinian citizens of Israel and also within the Palestinian Authority, there has been leadership that has been speaking out, condemning the atrocities of October 7th and calling for restraint from the Arab citizens.
So I want to be sensitive to everyone's time and certainly to Rabbi Steve. So we'll take a few more questions. We have a couple online. We have one in the room. Let me go to Carol online first.
Good morning, Rabbi Steve. They can't hear me? Wait a second. Good morning, Rabbi Steve. It's just heartwarming to see your face. It really is. My question was about the children. In this kind of a situation, it's traumatizing for adults, let alone children. Has large-scale planning gone into counseling or psychological support for the kids in the future? Has that started to happen?
Not even close to the degree that it needs to happen. We're working on it in our community out of the funds that that we've been able to raise so far. I have a certain amount that I've put to the side for that. These kids who have, especially the ones who are in elementary and high school now, who, made it through COVID, and we're just beginning to see the impact of that on their social skills and on their education and on their development. Now to be hit with this, the trauma. Every time, which is several times daily, we see the alerts that are going off around the country. And thank God it's rare that a siren actually goes off right here. But we're close enough that we can hear them go off in some of our neighboring areas, but the alert system is very pinpoint accurate. And then we listen to the news afterwards and pray to hear the phrase that Zelogaram Nezek, that there wasn't any any damage. And as my grandfather would have said, pardon my French, but every time I hear that, I think bullshit. They're saying there was no damage when there were thousands, tens or hundreds of thousands of people, children, hearing a siren, running to a shelter, not knowing if they were going to make it, if their house was still going to be standing when they came out, if their family members who they weren't with at that moment, where they were and what shelter they were running to. That trauma, that when they say there was no damage, they're forgetting about that trauma. I'll share with you years ago with cast lead, with one of the earlier. They didn't call it a war. I forget what the term was in English, but an operation or something. But when Gezer was within range and we had sirens that would go off. A few months after that, we went to visit my wife's brother. She's got a brother and a sister here in Israel, and she has another brother in Congers, which is right by Nyack in New York. And we went and we were with them. The first night we had just landed. We were sitting around, and they have in their neighborhood, in their village, they have a volunteer fire department. And when they call in the volunteer fire department, there's a little siren that goes off. We're sitting around in the house and the siren goes off. My wife, my children, all of us panicked. Right? Our reaction was, where's the shelter? What are we supposed to do? Until we remembered where we were, and they said, you're okay. So it's just the fire department. That's nothing compared to what we've been going through this time. And combined with those who live in the Gaza area, and all of the news that it's impossible to turn off. What was supposed to be the safest place, my home, my bedroom, being with my family, ended up being filled with monsters for many people. And I don't know how we move on from that.
We had a question in the room. Seth? Yeah.
My question, and I've been to Israel twice, although not recently. Why did all the safeguards break down? I thought there had been protocols and policies or whatnot that have been in place for decades. And it seemed that not one of them did their job on October 7th. What's really, really bothering me to no end is that there have been stories in the American media that Netanyahu knew as far as 10 to 12 months ago that this was planned out and he and his cabinet did nothing. Why?
In many, many ways, this is our 9/11. Who knew what? Who failed to connect the dots? Who was connecting the dots and wasn't listened to? I know that there are many, many people who are working, but the real work on that is going to have to wait till this immediate crisis is over, and we can do a concentrate on an investigation. But you're absolutely right. One of my daughter's good friends is Ktsina, an officer with the units of those who were on the lookout posts along the border. First of all, many of them reported that there was unusual threatening activity and drills going on. And for whatever reason, it wasn't acted upon, and not acted upon soon enough. And many of the young women that she trained for these positions were among those who were killed or injured. Luckily, she was actually on a different border by the West Bank and not by Gaza. Otherwise, who knows? But yeah, the heads are going to roll. But now's not the time when we're able to focus on the investigation.
So two last questions. One which was posted online about the UN, and the question was about the UN controlling the distribution of humanitarian aid so that it reaches this innocent civilians. But I know there's so much more. So any comments you want to make about the relationship, Rabbi Steve, with the UN?
The UN and the Red Cross, as far as Israel is concerned, are both a complete and total, not just a joke, but they do more damage than good. The UN, I don't even know how to respond to the fact that it took 2 months to get even lip service from the Women's Organization of the UN condemning what happened to so many women. There's video, there's proof, and they've said nothing. That UN schools and UN teachers are complicit. Again, we have videos, we have pictures, we have proof. Storage facilities for weapons, providing meeting space for key leadership of Hamas. Teachers, at least 2 teachers from UN schools who had kidnapped people that were hostages being held in their homes.
Wow.
The Red Cross, do I expect them to have luck getting into Gaza to see the hostages? No. Do I expect them to be banging on the table, to be shouting at the top of their lungs? You have to let us in, to be screaming, to be demanding at the United Nations in front of the international community? I don't understand how they cannot be doing that. All they have done is provide a 15-minute shuttle service, been an Uber, bringing hostages from when they released the handful of hostages, bringing them from the point that Hamas brought them to then the Red Cross brought them the rest of the way into Egypt or into Israel before we took them. Other than that, they've been useless. They haven't even been responsive to the families of the hostages who have desperately reached out to the Red Cross to try to provide medications for all of the elderly who are in Israel, as well as people with colitis and with all kinds of problems, trying to contact the Red Cross to say, please try to get this medicine to them. And the Red Cross doesn't answer. If you've got any contacts right? As far as I'm concerned, the U.S. government, the global community should pull out of, not pull out of, but drop all funding, anything that we might be giving to the Red Cross, and doing everything we can to change this. It's busha. It's an embarrassment.
So one last question, my friend, as we get close to the end of our time, and it's not so much on the war, somewhat of a personal question, because we started recognizing the fact that you've lived in Israel for 25 years, you made Aliyah, having come from here. And I'm just curious, whether amplified by a moment like this, but do you find yourself at all having a moment where you kind of second guess that decision, or go, Aliyah, maybe this wasn't such a good idea?
So there are two answers to the question.
Okay.
The first answer is the one I've been giving for many, many years, which was the answer that of blessed memory my mother-in-law used to say, that you make Aliyah every day. Every day you read the news, you listen to the news, something happens, and it makes you say, how can I live in this godforsaken place? How can I live in a place where my people do, and then fill in the blank? Whatever, at any given time we're annoyed at the government about. But then something else happens that same day that makes you say, how could I live anywhere else? As we're celebrating Hanukkah, in my backyard, if I go 5 minutes in that direction, I'm at Tel Gezer, which is a biblical site, and some of the Maccabees were there. If I go 15 minutes in that direction, I get to Modi'in. That's where the Maccabees, that's where the story, that's where much of it took place. And if I go a half an hour or 45 minutes, keep going in that direction, then I reach where there wasn't enough oil in the temple. Right? I'm living it. It's in my backyard. And I love that. As far as how things today impact that, when the war first started, for a day I thought about trying to convince my wife to take our son, who is 22 years old, did Army service, but he's on the autism spectrum. And he did a special Army unit for young adults with autism. And he's working now in a company using those same skills with artificial intelligence and stuff that I don't understand. But I saw what those first 24, 48 hours were doing to him, and I was thinking maybe she should take him to her brothers, to family, to someplace in the States. Then I realized none of us are going anywhere. This is our home. And he, as difficult as it's been for all of us coping with this, I can't imagine being anywhere else. My, 85-year-old mother, I was supposed to be with her for Thanksgiving and next week celebrating her birthday. And she said, Steve, you're not coming. She said, I know you can't leave right now. You can't leave your family, your daughter's in the Army. You can't leave your community. She said, that's your home and you need to be there. So we make Aliyah every day, but I can't imagine being anywhere else, especially when I see what's going on campuses, when I see what's going on with the rise on anti-Semitism around the world. I think it's never been more important to be here and make sure that we stay here.
My friend, we have kept you long past the allotted time, so I thank you. Somebody posted in the chat, and I'll mention, hearing from you, along with laying out some of the nuance, some of which we can hear, some of which we can't, some of which you've spoken about, and even I myself, who somewhat of a news junkie, had not heard before. And within your descriptions and just your whole demeanor, we appreciate both the angst and the pain that you and a lot of people are feeling, and the sense of hope, which I personally say gives me hope to hear you talk in those terms. So on behalf of everyone here, everyone online, thank you. To those who are paying attention still, which is, I think, everybody, we are grateful to Rabbi Steve. And for those of you who might be so inclined, we invite you to donate. I don't know, Rabbi Steve, if you are able to throw the link into the chat, but there are ways. We invite everybody, if you want to donate directly, there are means to do that. Rabbi Steve might put it in the chat. I have the link that we will make available to people. Or if you wish, you can send in a donation. You can send it to my discretionary fund, put Rabbi Steve or Kibbutz Gezer, and know that I will certainly transfer it to him and to the kibbutz and his congregation. Yes?
Is there anything the kids can do for them through the kibbutz, so either through the religious school or as parents for our own children, something they can do for your kids? They can pick up.
What I can say is, you're doing it. Having this conversation, the mails and the shows of support and concern, knowing that we're not alone, knowing that we have you standing with us, it makes a huge difference. In the last, I've written, I don't know, well over a dozen updates about what's going on and what we're dealing with here. And the last one that I wrote, I talked about the Emmaus community, our Catholic friends, and I talked about bar and bat mitzvah celebrations and people who were doing all kinds of amazing things to help displaced families and building bridges and volunteering on farms. Each one was one of the 8 candles. But when we light the candles, we use the shamash, the helper candle, the working candle, to light all the rest of them. And all of our people abroad, like you, that are standing with us, that are supporting us, that are praying with us, that are donating to help us to be able to help our soldiers and people who've been injured. That's helping us to light the candles, to keep all of this going. So keep doing that. And I would say do what you can to help get in touch with congressmen, to get in touch with officials, to help them better understand how important it is to keep supporting Israel during this crisis and to be fighting against global anti-Semitism. Thank you. And when this is over, come see us again.
That's a plan. So Rabbi Steve has posted both a link and a an address to send checks to, or again, you can do them here, however you want to. But again, thank you all for your time. Rabbi Steve, thank you for your time, your friendship, and your amazing heart. Thank you all. Be well and Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach.
אז הלילה